Temba is reading his newspaper and says to his wife, Zozo, look, here is an article about how women use about twice as many words per day as men do. And Zozo responds, that's because we have to tell you everything twice. Good evening and welcome to Talk with Rams live on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you for choosing to join us on this rather cold Wednesday evening.
Thank you very much.
This is the best 30 minutes on digital media you can ever choose. So stay with us. You have to agree with me, yesterday's content was out of the park. I mean, even the president could not derail us. Tsulo and Batabile had amazing content, and I really think that it is that kind of content, the more we can mine it, the better for all of us. And on that note, I'm going to ask you to participate on the show. I want you to share with us your views about the content, about the topics, about the guests that we bring in. I want you to critique us, tell us what works and what doesn't work. So please write to me, rams@talkwithrams.com, rams@talkwithrams.com, and take charge. Own this show. Let me know what works so that we can make it even better for you. So now to today's topic. The Media Diversity and Development Agency has opened its second phase of emergency relief funding to all community broadcast projects across South Africa, holding a valid license from ICASA. I have to express that very clearly, holding a valid license from ICASA. So to tell us more about this funding, but also about the MDDA in general and why it is important in our lives, is the CEO, Zuki Potye, who's joining us, and I'm so ready to have a conversation with her, and I hope you join us in the conversation. Molo wakhona sisi.
Molo Rams, kunjani?
Ndiphila kontombi man, kunjani ku?
Akho ntombi nakum, okwabafana bodwa.
When I learned that phrase, I never forgot it.
And it's supposed to say akontwembi.
So I knew the guy was doing it deliberately, but I got stuck with it, and I'm not changing. Now I'm saying
many people use it, Rams. Many people. Thank you very much for having me.
It's quite an honor to have you, and to know that you are busy working at this time and doing amazing work. But we'll get to the relief fund later. I want us to start with MDDA. For those who don't know, who is MDDA? What do you guys do? Why do we need to know you?
The MDDA is actually such a simple and yet very important arm of government. It's an entity of the state. It's a statutory development agency whose mandate is derived from Section 13 and Section 32 of the Constitution, and thereby providing for freedom of expression and access to information. I think that is first and foremost the mandate derived from the Constitution of the MDDA. And so how does it do that? But before maybe I get to that, just the formulation of the entity itself, it was born out of a partnership between the government, the major print and commercial broadcasters, where they came together. And when there was so much talk about the need for diversification of the news and information, plurality of voices, giving voices to those communities that were neglected by major broadcasters or major print. And so we're responsible through the community sector itself, which we then fund by providing startup grants and ensuring its sustainability through the funding. So we ensure that there's access to information and those press freedoms that are enshrined in the Constitution. That's largely just basically in a simple form what MDDA is.
When we talk about community media, what exactly are we talking about? And let me make it slightly, let me give an example. So if tomorrow I decide I'm going to start a newspaper for Dobsonville, which is where I come from and where I live, a small but very important place in Soweto called Dobsonville. Would I be able to come to you and ask for funding? How does it work?
All right. So the people that qualify for MDDA support and REMS, it's important here for me to also emphasize that the MDDA does not only provide support to the community media, which is financial. We also provide non-financial support in the form of training, capacity building, and many other things, research and so forth. So who qualifies for funding or support of the MDDA? All community media qualify for MDDA support. We currently have more than 160 beneficiaries in broadcasting and about 100 community and small commercial print. The reason REMS, the number is not increasing, it's because of the lack of sustainability in the sector, we find ourselves refunding community outlets that we funded before. And it is in our interest not to let them die after we have funded them. And so if you are a community broadcaster, whether you're a radio station or television, and you've got a valid broadcast license, which you obtain from the regulator, ICASA, you can then come. But remember, there's also a qualifying criteria and a policy and regulations that the MDDA also must meet in supporting the sector. And so you must also qualify through our application process. And if you are a small commercial print and community print, you also qualify. In the print sector, community print, we also support digital print. Online print we support. We're just not able at this moment to fund community broadcasting because of the lack of legislative framework from ICASA, the regulator at this point. They are busy with a pilot with Centec. And once that has been done and they are satisfied that they can regulate that space, and there is more certainty about the regulation of digital sound broadcasting in South Africa, then the MDDA can consider supporting those entities.
You used a very important word that leads to the next question, because I wanted to know, so your support is not necessarily only for non-profit. You do also support commercial profit-making community media.
Yes, certainly. So in the broadcasting, broadcasters must purely be non-profit. Because remember, part of our mandate is to ensure that there's ownership and control of the media through the community media by previously disadvantaged groups. And through the community media, we also promote and we support those that promote the use of indigenous languages. That is first and foremost at the MDDA. So in terms of your business formation, you must totally be an NPO if you are a broadcaster. That means television and radio stations. However, in the space of print, we have got, I think we've funded about 53 community print and more in the small commercial print, because those are independent broadcasters. And so that is just the groups that we fund. So you can be an NGO, Section 21, non-profit on the broadcasting side. However, we allow for small commercial print on the print side.
Are you playing in the digital space? And this is a very selfish question.
Yes, we are. We're not big, and I've gotten some rep from the board about that recently, particularly around the pandemic, because I think we're gonna now, we've seen the need to be digital. I mean, we've had board meetings that we never thought we could have board meetings on Zoom or digital. Last night I was listening to and following an interview of the board of the MDDA. It was on Teams. And I don't think even Parliament had actually considered and thought that that would happen. And that is a possibility. However, REMS, last year already, we had gone to telcos like your Vodacoms and your MTNs and so forth, and started a conversation with them to say we would like the community media to actually have a presence in the digital space. Obviously, because of the technological advancements and the technological convergence. And so we've had those discussions, and we have agreed with them that, in fact, when we went to them initially, we asked them if they would be able to zero rate a geographic location. And they said, no, what they can do is they can zero rate an app a website or a URL. And so those are the discussions that we've had. And I think I'm sad that we moved very slow in wrapping up those conversations, because last year already by November, we're supposed to have started piloting digitizing the community media space. I normally say, if you go to commercial broadcasters or even major commercial print, whereas they print, they also very big on digital space. And that is the reason why one of our units is print and digital. So we do fund digital print, and we would like to go big on that space in the future, in the near future, for that matter.
In the near future, I can't wait for that near future, as I said, for selfish reasons. Now, let's go to COVID-19 relief. I saw the media release that you issued, and you recognize that there's been financial pressure on community and broadcast sector. And I'd like us to talk a bit about that. I know there's been a fund already that came out earlier in April, and there's a second batch that's coming out. Tell us a bit about both of them.
All right. When the president first announced and pronounced the COVID-19 as a national disaster, and further announced a lockdown, we knew that the community media sector, because we know where they are, and we know that advertising, particularly from government, in fact, even from the private sector, they struggle getting it, and they rely on that. And so most of them have got small contracts with small businesses. And when the lockdown hit all of us and the pandemic, as a result of the pandemic, so the community media lost most of those contracts, and therefore it meant that they were going to be left without advertising. On the 30th of March, the MDDA first launched the first phase of the emergency relief, aimed at supporting the community media to be able to still continue with its work. We were very aware that it would be not nearly enough. It was 10 million, which I've already explained that we funded 115 community broadcasters and 115 print outlets. And so I think it would have been about 5 million on each side. And it was in small packages, RAMs of 45,000. On items like your PPEs, your telecommunications, refueling, cars that we asked that they hire to transport staff, and for staff to go and generate content so that they can actually disperse information that is needed on COVID-19 to the communities.
So the criteria that you use, firstly, so all these media that would have helped would be the ones that you have already funded, or I could have come even if you have not funded me before and say, COVID has affected me, could you fund me using the relief fund?
Yes, Rams. And that is the reason why we were able to fund 230, if my maths does not fail me. We've never at any time funded 250 outlets at a go. So the relief fund, it's very important for me to stress that it is open to all community media that qualify, because there is a set criteria. It's a small criteria. It's not your normal big criteria, laborious criteria that is set for the normal grants, because in the normal grants, then people apply for millions. And so there is a very stricter criteria to do that. There isn't this time. However, in the second phase, unlike in the first phase, where there is the criteria was more relaxed, in this phase, the board has asked us to ensure that the people that get the funding are people that are deserving of it. So in the part of the criteria was for us to then ask for people's 3 months bank statements, just for people to be able to demonstrate that, look, prior to the pandemic, I was able to generate some 10,000. And as a result of the pandemic, which we know has happened, I'm not able to generate anything, or I'm able to just generate 5,000 or 2,000. So people were very anxious. The stations were very anxious. The sector was very anxious about the uncertainty of us asking for bank statements and what it would mean if they've got a favorable balance in their bank statements. No, Rams, let me explain it. If we found in your bank statement that you've got an amount, you must just demonstrate in that same application form, which is a 2-pager really, you demonstrate that that money is earmarked or committed to meet other obligations other than the things that we are prepared to fund, which is basically your operational cost in this stage. Because what we found, REMS, was even with the initial emergency relief of the MDDA, the stations were already calling and asking to divert some of the funding towards rentals and bonds that are getting in arrears, falling into arrears, and so forth. And so we said, hang on, it's very crucial at this stage for us to ensure that you're still able to discharge your mandate, that of access to information to people of South Africa in the languages that they speak and in languages that they understand. So in this phase, we then said we will look at the fallout on operational costs, your salaries, your stipends, and it doesn't matter if you are not a beneficiary of the MDDA, everyone who qualifies will be funded within that set criteria.
And this relief fund is a grant, not a loan. Am I clear? Is that what I understand right?
It's fully a grant. It's fully a grant. It was a grant. The MDDA has never given loans at any given time. It's always grants. That's what we disperse. So if I must just explain the nature of the package this time, we disbursed 45,000 rands in the initial package. Of that 10 million constituted of 45,000 small packages to the sector. For broadcasting this time, it's 50,000. And for print this time is 20,000, and purely for generating content. So it goes towards publishing and distribution. Whereas, and you must remember and appreciate, REMS, that in terms of independent publishers, unlike radio stations that have got equipment in terms of studios, in the form of studios, the independent publishers don't need big office spaces, and so their rental will not be necessarily be the same as the broadcasters, as the amount that the broadcasters need. So we've set aside an amount for rentals for your bonds, but it is important that you demonstrate that prior to the pandemic, you were able to meet these obligations, and that it is due to the pandemic, because remember, this relief is just towards the pandemic. If you're struggling to sustain, you must then apply through the normal route of the normal grants, which call will be issued in the second quarter of the financial year. So people were also again anxious that because we've provided the first 10 million, now we're in the second 10 million, they thought that we've done away with the targets, the normal grant of the 2020-21 financial year. No. We will implement our APP or business plan as we've set it. I think where we don't meet the target, it would be that because the pandemic is stretched a bit and that we are unable to actually go and do the work physically. But whatever we can do digitally, we'll continue to do it digitally. For instance, at this point, there were 22 projects of the normal grant that were approved by the board. In fact, it's 22 broadcasters and 10 small commercial and community print, totaling about 50 million in March, when the board also approved the 20 million for the emergency relief RMs.
Great. I think I understand the relief fund clearly, and I'm sure that everybody else understands it. I'm going to move to a broader subject of how to manage what you guys are going through in managing community media. But before I do that, maybe we should talk about how do then people apply for the relief fund that's currently running.
All right. So what we did, REMS, was we circulated and we put on our website the application letter. So there is a letter that goes to the broadcasters and to the publishers. And what we did was we worked on an ICASA list, we worked on our beneficiary list, both print and broadcast, but what we also did, which we did even initially with the first phase, we're working through and we work with the sector bodies, your NCRFs, which is the National Community Radio Forum, SACRO, which is the South African Community Radio Organization, your Association for Independent Publishers, your National Association for Broadcasters, because even though NAB is responsible for commercial broadcasters, it has got a small membership of the community media. So we've worked with them to ensure that we're not only focusing on the databases that we have, that if we are to miss anyone, that those sector bodies are able to then assist us broaden the net. How do you apply? There is a small application form. It sets out the requirements. There is also a requirement of in the form that you provide us, like I've explained, with your income and expenditure statement. This is where we're gonna see that indeed you are in need of the funding. But everyone is welcome to apply within the set criteria for as long as you are non-profit in terms of broadcasters and you possess a valid broadcast license and you are a small commercial or community print, you are free to apply. The applications must be sent to MDDA. They must be sent to applications@mdda.org.za. Most information, in fact, all the information that I'm talking about is on our website. When we launched on Monday, the second fund, the relief fund, we actually issued a press statement as well. It's on our website. We've also, REMS, established a helpline this time because REMS, I think we must take responsibility and acknowledge our mistakes. The sector, in fact, when we thought that we'd actually done well with launching the emergency relief, we got so much criticism. And that was because we did not communicate sufficiently. We ended up with things like open letters to the president because we put the closing date of the fund to 3 days. And that was a big oversight. So this time there's no closing date. It's first come, first serve. And once the fund is depleted, which is the 10 million, we'll then issue another statement to say the fund is closed because the fund is depleted. And REMS, I would like to apologize to the sector and the beneficiaries of the previous fund if we actually caused much frustration to them in the manner in which we communicated, and we're trying to step up in the second phase.
Wow, I don't get that a lot from a lot of leaders to apologize and acknowledge their mistakes. That's great. I love that, Zuki. Now, look, freedom is a very expensive thing. And part of your work, by the way, is to finance freedom. You're financing media freedom. Your job is to make sure that there's media freedom. And, you know, even the figures that you mentioned, to somebody else, it may sound like a lot of money, but you guys function on a very small budget. But it's
very small
difference somewhere else. You know, when I hear 45,000, and I'm thinking, oh, that's probably gonna last me 3 days. But to a particular publication, somewhere Coffee Baba could last them another 2 months to get them going. And on that note, how do you make sure that, and let's give him or her a name, Usizozo starts a publication, the stores are aimed at young people in the Transkei area, and it's very important. And it's dealing with issues of responsibility of young people and stuff. How do we make sure that one, she's passionate about issues and she wants to drive them, but the flip side is that she probably does not have the tools to run it as a business that's going to be sustainable. How do you help her without saying to her, no, Jonga, we hear you, but you can't run this thing, and turn it back?
Yeah, it's really been very challenging, Rems. You must remember that I think I'm only how many months in the job? I was appointed on 5 the 1st of January.
That's less than 5. Yeah, about that. I know. Yes. I've been watching you.
Yes, I've been there but it's been very interesting because at least I was appointed after a 20-month stint as the acting CEO of the MDDA. It's been very challenging. And what is challenging, and I think it's painful for me coming from a rural village. By the way, we've got Iskawara Etofimvab. It's a newspaper, and we grew up. And I didn't know that I would actually get involved with this sector at that point, at any given time. Until now, I must work with Iskawara. Actually, Iskawara News Etofimvab. So how do we ensure that this is Zozo? We are cooler, we sustain, and she's able to do what she ought to be doing in ensuring that these freedoms, media freedoms in particular, and access to information enshrined in the Constitution, that the South Africans live it. We, as I've said, our role is and mandate is to ensure that we start these entities up, start up funding, and we provide grants. If you're a broadcaster, you then get equipment and so forth. In fact, even print would get your laptops, your cameras, and printers and so forth. REMS, we fund everything. We fund everything. We fund from salaries, stipends. On a lighter note, we also have got 500 rands that if we fund you, is set aside for bank charges monthly. And because we know we're gonna need an audited financial statement from you, we even fund you, I think about 13 to 17,000, the money we set aside for an audit fee. So we fund a lot of variety of things from equipment because when we then fund things like stipends and salaries, remember that we must support the government in alleviating poverty and in improving job security. So we play in that space to support the government in terms of employment. So we pride ourselves that most stations, in fact, all of them, rely on volunteers from the villages and from the communities in which they broadcast and publish from. And so it is important for us to actually make sure that those young ones, those youth that leave their homes with nothing and go and start a career in the community media sector, that we give them stipends. In fact, I have pushed my team this time to say, if you guys are saying we're standardizing 2,000 rands, are you aware that 2,000 rands is not a living wage that the president announced? Yeah. And so I pushed my team to think beyond the 2,000 to say, and they said, CEO, our first bet is to say at least every station, every entity we fund for now must at least have a standard item called stipend, so that those young people that take their time to actually go and support the community media, in many cases and in most cases for free. We're saying no child must actually do that for free if the MDDA is to live up to its mandate. So we do that. So what's this Zozo? Would struggle a bit, and sometimes we fund and they come back, and then we lose them, and then because we're looking at other ones. But let me explain our vision, Rams, because we know. Remember now that the MDDA was formed in 2002 and it first operated in 2003. So in 2023, the MDDA will be turning 20, and therefore we are saying that when we turn 20, we must have looked back to why we were formed and how much impact we have made in the previous 20 years, that we will say in 2023. And then I said to my team, how about we conceptualized what we call a sustainability model? Rams, it's not meant to be a silver bullet. It is something that we think we can work towards together with the sector and all relevant industries and sectors, your academia, the civil society, the government at large. Because if I can just make an example about the community broadcasters, because they struggle a lot, because if you play music, you owe SAMRO. If you on air, you owe Centec. If you and this and that, you understand. And so there's just so many debts to pay. There's rent. And we have found ourselves, Rem, sometimes having to go to court to fight for the broadcast equipment that we installed in a studio, in a radio station, because they fell behind with rentals. Then the studio is taken away by the landlord, confiscated by the landlord, obviously because the landlord is looking for his or her money from the studio, from the station. And so then we're finding ourselves fighting fires, paying money to go and get our studio back from the landlord.
I'm
sorry.
But I hear you, and I'd like us maybe to talk about that more, because I'm actually even thinking maybe you actually should encourage the media that you support that at some point they must turn themselves into commercial property that funds itself going forward. But that should be a conversation for another time. I was more interested tonight in the relief fund, and I want to end it for you on a very good note. Douglas Mjekula from Kai News writes, I'm the founder of Kai News, and we have been beneficiaries of the first phase of the MDDA relief fund, and we have applied for the second phase. We appreciate the assistance Mrs. Potye and the board have given to community media. Now, I love such feedback.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We actually appreciate that feedback, but we also appreciate criticism as well.
Well, Yeah, and I agree with you. We want criticism too, but people must also acknowledge the good things that happen, and I'm grateful for that.
We've received a lot of appreciation from the sector from the first phase, I must say.
You're doing excellent work. I know that much, and I know, again, I repeat, on a non-existent budget, you do amazing work. Thank you so much, Zuki.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to be staying in touch. We need to talk more about this thing. I'm an advocate for media freedom, and I know it costs money.
It does. But thank you very much for having me, Rams. Stay safe.
Thank you very much, Zuki Potye, CEO of the MDDA. You can find them on the website www.mdda.org.za. You're going to find a lot more just beyond the relief fund, because they don't exist for the relief fund. They've been around for almost 20 years now. They do much more than just relieving. They build the media. Tomorrow, I was going to say to you, I don't know what you're going to do. Trust me, it got confirmed right in the middle of this broadcast. Brown Sense, if you're on Facebook, you would know Brown Sense. Brown Sense has now launched Brown Sense Africa. They've gone continental, a platform that allows small business people to access markets and work together to become their own champions. Has been doing well on our Facebook. They've now gone continental, and tomorrow I'm having a chat with Zuki Soni, the founder of Brown Sense, right here, 7:30 p.m. on the same platform. You gotta join. It's a platform that has done amazing work, and I'd like to celebrate them and also show you how it can benefit you. It's Talk with Rams on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube. Do subscribe to our platform on YouTube and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you very much to Freddie for making things happen in the background. He knows his job. I'll keep him for much longer if I get some funding from the MDDA. From me, Rams Mabote, good night and God bless.
Good night, Rams. Thank you.
Wow. That was good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fred, are you happy? Rams, we need an hour.
We do. We do. Look, I'll tell you this much. You are an amazing communicator. So we need more time. Yeah, no. You got to the point that I needed, and you got to them very, very well.
I'm glad. I'm glad because I'm a governance person.
Well, I saw your portfolio. I saw your CV, so to speak.